latest information coming from the mayor of New York City. Apparently, there are more than 300 firefighters who are unaccounted for and feared dead, more than 32 police officers missing. They're looking for them as well. We will continue to update the information coming in just a moment. This is the Fox News Channel's continuing live special coverage of a terrorist attack that has literally stunned this country. Just getting word now from the mayor of New York City. They have confirmed that there are people alive in the basement of the World Trade Center. They have gotten word that at least 2 people have placed cell phone calls to relatives in Seattle, of all places, letting them know they are alive. Also letting them know there are others with them trapped in the basement of the World Trade Center. The mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani, saying that there has been a rescue effort underway there for some time to reach them. They haven't reached them yet. This is one very difficult aspect of this because they don't know what is still standing, what is still supportable in the World Trade Center. These are 2 towers that were 110 stories tall. Now the only thing that is left of them is about 5 stories, and they don't know what is still secure. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, has dispatched a number of urban search and rescue teams to try to fortify these buildings and extract the victims. This will take many hours. And as we have been explaining throughout the night, time is of the essence. With me now, my colleague, John Gibson.
Yeah, and joining us in the studio here is Monsignor Jim Lisante of the Catholic Church. And, Father, I think we all want to know how people in your profession, if you will, deal with 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 dead, families out there. There's that many families out there wondering what has happened. No accounting, no way of knowing what's going on. There's this rubble that's about 3 or 4 feet or 20 feet deep that contains these people, some maybe a few alive, but a huge, huge number of dead. And this goes beyond what we've seen in any terrorist act anytime.
I think, John, that every parish, every synagogue, every outreach grouper in the metropolitan area has to be sensitive for their people's sake to, first of all, those who have lost family members and try to be supportive. So bereavement groups are going to be necessary. But even beyond that, to our school children, I can see many of our children wondering about what kind of evil force could bring something like this about. I went tonight to St. Patrick's Cathedral. Cardinal Egan had a mass there for all of those who have died. And he was very eloquent, and he said, let's look at the positive miracles out of this, too. And he talked about being around the lower part of Manhattan today, visiting the hospitals and seeing people of incredible generosity, both the firemen and the policemen, but also people who had no particular business being there except that they wanted to help. And he talked about the great spirit of New York. He said, there's a great evil in the world, but there's greater good, and we have to celebrate the good.
Okay, Father, I wouldn't want to quibble with you about that. However, what's going to happen here in the next few days if these numbers turn out to be true is there's going to be a list published, and there's going to be a little picture by everyone. And it's going to take pages and pages and pages and pages of the New York Times, and millions of people are going to be angry like they've never been angry before. How do religious leaders control that kind of anger?
Oddly enough, I think that religious leaders have to approach it in some ways not unlike the president did in talking about fair retribution. You know, we're a country of laws, and our laws have to be upheld. And an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth is only something you come to after there's a sense of justice having been served. So first of all, we have to find out who's responsible before we hold them accountable. I want to say something else, though, John, that I think is important to say. These people who hate us enough to do these heinous crimes didn't develop their hatred this morning. This is coming after years and years of what they perceive to be our particular oppression of them and their people. I guess I wonder if we hit too hard, and especially hit the wrong people, if we're not creating a new generation of children and grandchildren of these new martyrs, and that's how they'll be portrayed, who will then come back and kill our grandchildren. In other words, when does the cycle of violence stop? When do we stop, keep hitting them, and they hit us? When do we finally say the insanity has to stop worldwide?
Well, yes, but the argument is we haven't hit. Well, I'll tell you what, Monsignor, hang with us just a second. We'll discuss this on the other side of a quick pause. Let me just remind everybody what we're talking about here. An untold number of dead. New York City Twin Towers collapsed, 4 planes hijacked, 4 crashed, 3 into their targets. We're going to take a quick pause to let our Fox News stations join us after just a moment. We are back. This is the Fox News Channel's continuing coverage of the terrorist attacks today in New York and Washington, D.C. 4 airliners hijacked, 3 hit targets in New York and Washington, the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center, as well as the Pentagon. Untold number of people have been killed. We have no idea how many. We know there's something upwards of 50,000 in the World Trade Center towers. This is a picture of the second plane hitting the second tower this morning, right about 9 o'clock. That plane was loaded with passengers, hijacked, and flown directly into those towers. And the incredible devastation that has followed. Monsignor Jim Lisante of the Catholic Church is with us right now. Linda? We
also have some more information to bring in, perhaps a very bitter coincidence. It so happens that September 11th was declared an International Day of Peace by the United Nations today. That we're obviously seeing that the declaration of that date is so very, very sad. Also getting information about some of the victims who were aboard those planes. There were 4 of them hijacked and crashed. 2 American Airlines, 2 United Airlines. They're beginning to release more and more of the passenger manifest. What is perhaps most important right now is that intelligence sources are telling us they believe that on one of those hijacked flights, there was a person who was connected with Osama bin Laden, and that person may have some connection in Broward County, Florida, or Daytona Beach, Florida, and that the FBI may be preparing to launch some sort of search in those areas. We're also getting word of other people who were on board those flights. We have mentioned before that Barbara Olson, a colleague here at Fox News, a frequent political commentator, was on board the plane that took off from Dulles Airport and ended up crashing into the Pentagon. Word now coming in that the passengers were herded in the back of the plane and told to call their loved ones and let them know that that plane was going down and that they were going to die. Also, more information coming in about others who were on board. The American Airlines Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles. Among others, we now know that the executive producer of the NBC TV show Frasier was on board that plane, along with his wife. Also, the co-founder of a very well-known technology company called Akamai, also on board American Airlines Flight 11 from Boston. More and more names coming in, but we are getting more and more information from those manifests. They are not complete yet. American Airlines, United Airlines, trying to reach all the relatives of those on board those planes, and until they do so, they will not give us a complete list of the manifests. John?
Before we go back to Monsignor Lisante, let's go to our Derry Alexander, who is at St. Vincent's, where they've been handling the wounded and the burned and the maimed and all of those injured today. Derry has some new information about what is going on there now. Derry?
Yeah, actually, John, over my shoulder, you can see they're actually bringing out a police officer, New York City police officer. There you see him on a gurney. I'm understanding that they are actually going to start digging again down at the World Trade Center. So they're expecting in the next couple of hours for things to get very, very busy here at St. Vincent's. Apparently, there's been a bit of a lull. You see another officer on a gurney.